Hi, I'm Alan Smith. In today's show, we're going to take a look at gardens with an interesting past, beautiful present, and bright hopes for the future. All coming up right after this. Hi, I'm Alan Smith. Thanks for joining us today. In this show, we're going to travel to two gardens where the past, present, and future is on everyone's mind. The first is the Biltmore Estate. It's the largest privately owned home in the United States, 4 acres under roof, surrounded by grounds of equal beauty and grandeur. At the Biltmore, we'll visit the historic horse barn and discover more about this part of the estate's history, the exciting things happening today, and plans for the future at Biltmore. After that, we'll head across the pond to England, where a trip to the elaborate vegetable garden at Chatsworth inspires us back home. And we'll even hear from the Duchess of Devonshire about her personal love of this garden. Plus, we'll answer a viewer question, take a look at 2 delicious recipes, and much more. So sit back and relax, because we're off to this amazing estate right after the break. Welcome back. We're here at the Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina. This is the Biltmore House. It was built by George W. Vanderbilt more than 100 years ago. The house has a floor plan of 4 acres. This is the historic horse barn on the property. This barn was once the hub of activity for the estate workers during its, well, pardon the expression, heyday. It's been restored to give visitors a sense of what life was like here in the 1890s. Let's step inside and meet Chuck Pickering and Jake Jones.
Historic horse barns, we refer to it. It's a 26,000 square foot barn. It was originally to hold the draft horses and the Clydesdale mules, which were the main work instrument for Biltmore Estate. They had a blacksmith shop there and what they call stores, where a lot of different things could be purchased on the estate. So it was primarily to feed the working units, which were the Clydesdales and the Clydesdale draft horses. And over a period of time, it became the social center for the community of employees that worked here. About 5 years ago, we started researching how to tell the agricultural story on Biltmore to our guests that were coming through, and we looked at restoring the historic horse barn and recreating a farmyard so kids could have an experience with animals. The animals that we have here, they're orphaned animals, so that's why they're so friendly for one thing, but they will become part of our brood herd, and they'll be out in the pastures with about 350 other cattle that we have, and then we have about 150 sheep that are part of our main herd. Well, Jake knows how to do about everything you could imagine, especially when it comes to on the farm, that if you get in trouble, Jake will get you out of it.
Oh, this is Big Mike. Big Mike is our draft horse, and which we just bought him about a month and a half ago. And he's really getting used to all the people here now. I talk to the children about, each animal here has got a job on the farm. And I talk to the children and tell them what the life is, my life was growing up on the farm, and let them compare it to their life they're growing up now. When I see the Biltmore in the future, I hope it's greater than what it is today.
Now, when we come back, we're going to hop overseas and visit a historic garden in England and discover more about this beautiful addition designed by the Duchess of Devonshire. Typically, when we think of vegetable gardens or kitchen gardens, the first thing that comes to mind isn't dazzling beauty or drifts of color. But if you mix things up a bit, have a little fun by adding some flowers or perhaps some interesting garden structures, the results can be charming, if not downright impressive. Frequently planted annuals that do well in most gardens are poppies, cornflowers, calendulas, cosmos, love in a mist, and of course the edible nasturtium. And I really like the way this garden designer has used sage, rosemary, thyme, and oregano against a backdrop of plum trees. Now, who says a vegetable garden has to be dull? By using patterns in your garden's design, the effect can be even more interesting. What we're seeing here is the kitchen garden at Chatsworth House in Derbyshire, England, and it's laid out in the loose, informal cottage style, even though Chatsworth House itself is about as far from a cottage as you can get. However, you'll find it interesting that the force behind this cottage garden style is the Duchess of Devonshire. Why is the kitchen garden one of your favorite areas?
Because of the food. Greed, I'm afraid.
You like to eat?
Yeah.
I have to agree. I have a small kitchen garden.
And do you have peas and beans? What do you grow?
I grow lots of different varieties of lettuce and broccoli and cool weather crops in the winter and fall, and then a lot of tomatoes and peppers in the summer.
There's nothing like stuff that you pick yourself at the time you want it, at the size you want it. Usually they get too big, don't they, peas and beans? And then they really only fit for animal food by the time you buy them in the shops. But if you can get your own at just the right size, it's nectar. And then?
Absolutely. The layout of the design of the kitchen garden, where did the inspiration come from for that?
Well, I used to go and stand up there on that platform where the greenhouses are and wonder what it would look like. It was just a slope with nothing in it, a couple of rows of beans. And I thought it'd be nice to have raised beds and to have them the vegetables radiating from the middle instead of the usual rows. That's all it is. It's no design, really.
Well, that radiating pattern is striking.
Well, it makes a change, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And as you walk around those raised beds, it's constantly changing as you go
that's
around.
Right, that's right. And we put apples in the middle for a bit of height.
One of the things that struck me about the layout, the design of that garden that gives it so much interest, are the vertical elements, the columnar apples, the arbors, the twiggy teepees for the peas and so forth.
You've got to have that in a big space, haven't you? You can't have it just flat on the ground, or it looks sort of too much all in one.
Yeah, it's just one-dimensional. That pathway down the middle has sort of a Giverny sort of feel with the nasturtium spilling over and so forth into the path.
And the annuals, which I do love, because they're just thrown in without any pattern or any idea of colour or fashion or anything. They're just packets of seeds thrown in, and at this time of year they do look wonderful, I think, because of the muddle.
You know, spending a morning with the Duchess of Devonshire was very inspiring. In fact, my entire visit at Chatsworth had me rethinking parts of my garden. And when we come back, I'll show you how I transferred some of these ideas of the past into my garden's future. So stay with us. Now, an eye-catching bloom that I have to show you here at the marketplace is phlox. Susan Shelley introduces us to a new variety with some tremendous improvements. Look at the color of that phlox.
That is quite something, isn't it?
It caught my eye all the way across from the other side of the greenhouse.
Well, she's got her own built-in battery, I think.
Now, the aroma I'm smelling, is this coming from this phlox? Oh
yeah, very
that
sweet.
is wonderful. Now the name of this one, what is it?
This is Phlox paniculata.
So summer phlox, a new variety.
Yep. And mildew resistant.
Really?
Yes.
Because that's always been the trouble with the phlox that I've grown,
It's
is that
the
you
phlox
can get the powdery mildew.
Absolutely, and this one is much more resistant to that.
Welcome back. Today we're exploring gardens with a past, present, and future. So far, we've been to the Biltmore. Chuck Pickering and Jake Jones took time out to share with us the restored horse barn that was once the hub of the estate for many employees. Then we were off to Chatsworth in England. We visited with the Duchess of Devonshire about her kitchen or vegetable garden. It's full of brilliant color as well as good things to eat. Now let me show you some ideas I've applied to my own garden from my travels to Chatsworth. I too have a vegetable garden, and I like to keep it well stocked with plenty of flowers and vegetables. I like the Duchess's idea of radiating beds, but for me, these geometrically designed beds provide a canvas for planting interesting combinations. Space-saving columnar apple trees are a welcome addition to the garden, just as they are at Chatsworth, although I must say, there the trees are used more for style than functionality. Now, if you have a small space and want some fruit trees, I highly recommend looking into some of the columnar or dwarf varieties, which often come bare root for fall planting. Outside the vegetable garden at Chatsworth is a whimsical cottage garden where shrubs and vines are crafted in the shapes of tables and chairs, fireplaces and stairs, even a bed. I created a sofa in my front garden after seeing these. You can learn about this project on my website and see some pictures. Focal points are also important. And in the garden at Chatsworth, well, some of the focal points are colossal, like Blanche's vase perched high on a hill. It was soon after seeing this enormous urn that I purchased these cast iron antique French urns for my garden. The size fits the scale of my garden and certainly reminds me of the glorious walk up the hill to see Blanche's vase. You know, one of the nicest things about visiting gardens on vacation is you can always come back with lots of ideas for your own garden. Now, a bit of advice. When you set out to see some of these places, you need to go armed. First, with a few items to make your visit more comfortable, namely a pair of good walking shoes. Some public gardens are quite large and you could spend most of the day on your feet. And for those sunny days, make sure you include a hat, some sunscreen, and sunglasses. These items will make your visit much more enjoyable. And I also like to take along a drawing pad where I can record some of my ideas. And of course, the camera, well, picture's worth 1,000 words, don't forget that. And I always pick up some brochures and postcards as a reminder of my visit. Okay, now it's time for viewer mail. Today we have a letter from Alice in the heart of Texas. And she writes, "This year I decided to try a new variety of basil. It's purple and has a fantastic fragrance. I saw your recipe on pesto, but you used green basil. Can I still make pesto with purple basil?" Well, Alice, get your blender out and your garlic and olive oil because you can make pesto with purple basil or just about any basil. Now, for those of you who haven't tried pesto, hold on to your taste buds because here's a recipe that just can't be beat. One of the herbs I always find plenty of room for in my garden is basil. Just when I think I have enough, I always add a few more plants because basil is the key ingredient in one of my favorite dishes, pesto. You know, pesto is a classic Italian sauce that's served over pasta. It actually comes from a place in Italy called Genoa. Now, I know that may seem like a long way from here, but it has American connections. Christopher Columbus was from there. Now, I know this sounds like a fancy gourmet dish, but it's actually very easy to make. You'll need enough basil for 1 tightly packed cup of chopped leaves, and add 2 cloves of fresh garlic, 1/4 teaspoon of ground pepper, and 1/4 cup of olive oil. The next ingredient is pine nuts, or you can use walnuts. I like to toast them in the oven. It gives them a little different flavor, but if you do, don't let them stay in too long, you can burn them. Add 1/2 cup of the nuts to the blender and puree all the ingredients together. The last step is to stir in about 1 cup of Romano or Parmesan cheese. This recipe makes a little over 1 cup, and when you use it, you want to use about 1/2 cup per pound of fresh cooked pasta. With basil being so plentiful this time of year, make some extra pesto. It's ideal for freezing and using in the fall and winter. There are more great recipes using garden fresh ingredients at pallansmith.com. You can also research answers to your questions there too. In fact, each week in our free newsletter, we post a sampling of questions and my answers. And who knows, your question might get used right here on the show. Okay, let's head back to Biltmore for a recipe from one of their fantastic chefs right after this. The Biltmore is the epitome of today's show on gardens with a past, present, and future. It was built to entertain, a tradition that continues today in the estate restaurants, especially the Bistro. Here, Chef Edwin French works out of an open-air kitchen that showcases this idea of field to table, or meals inspired by items grown on the estate.
Here we are at the Bistro on Biltmore Estate. Today we're going to be working with the Biltmore Estate raised lamb. I'm going to coriander crush this today and go ahead and get this into the oven. What I'm going to be working with today is caramelized pearl onions, and then a bit later I'm going to incorporate some of our Biltmore Estate blackberries. Also port and balsamic reduction that I've infused with a little lamb essence. And then also we have here are some estate raised zucchini and squash. Also, I'm going to garnish the plate with some of our wonderful baby lettuces that Eli Herman grows. Now I'm going to work the blackberries into the ragu, and I wanted to do this last minute because if you know the blackberries will break down and then you won't even know that they're in there. I think now that our lamb is about done, we can go ahead and begin plating this. So from here, I'm gonna take the lamb and I'm gonna slice it really thin. Okay, now that we have a bit of this sliced and ready to plate, I'll make myself a little space here. Okay, I'm gonna begin with the ragu, just right here in the center. Ooh, look at those blackberries. Okay, we're gonna put this off to the side here. And I'm gonna go ahead and lay some of this lamb over the top. And there we have that. And from this point, I'm gonna go ahead and sauce the dish. Nice over at the top of the meat here. All right, then I'm gonna work a bit of the sauce around the plate. Some summer squash here. Work these little guys around the plate. Add some nice color to this dish. And then from here, I'm just gonna garnish the plate with some of these wonderful microgreens. And here we have wonderful Biltmore Estate coriander crusted lamb with blackberry and pearl onion ragu with port and balsamic reduction and baby micro lettuces and summer squash.
If you want beautiful trees, shrubs, and flowers, but your last water bill gave you sticker shock, don't punish your plants. Grow with Nutri-Moist crystals, a biodegradable crystal that helps to hold moisture and nutrients closer to your plant's roots. Mix these granules into potting soil or flower beds. Add water, and the granules enlarge, locking moisture into the plant's root zone, which ultimately means less watering for you and more time and money on your hands. Want a more beautiful garden with less work? Learn more about Nutri-Moist crystals at nutrimoist.com.
Well, that's it for today's show. I hope you enjoyed our visit to Biltmore and Chatsworth as much as I did. Those are incredible properties, and even though they're large, there are lots of ideas that we can distill down and use in our own gardens. Until next time, I hope you'll get out there and grow something. From the garden, I'm Alan Smith.
In this garden I dream of a bed of flowers. Bluebirds sing of the beauty all around us. And every time the sun comes out, I can't help but smile. Oh, no, I can't help but smile.